Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We have got hopefully a very informative and helpful training for you guys today. Before we get started, and while we're waiting on a few people to trickle in, I do want to launch a poll so that we can gauge who is with us today and what your roles are in the affordable housing industry. So if you will answer the questions that are on your screen. We have got Amy Hammond is going to do the bulk of the training after I go through a couple slides to introduce what we're going to talk about today. And then Carolyn Metzger is monitoring the questions box. So as you have questions, feel free to type them there, but we have something new and different today. We're going to, if you have questions you want to ask out loud, then you can raise your hand and we will unmute you so that you can ask your question out loud. We thought this was the perfect place to test that out and see if we are able to do that. I am looking right now to see kind of how to do that. So if you have questions you want to ask out loud, you'll raise your hand. If you can't find where to raise your hand, let me look for that. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Kara Poli. I'm a compliance monitor here at the department. I don't know how to tell when everybody's answered the poll. Oh, I see now. Okay. There's a ton of people logging in right now, so I'll leave the poll up. For those of you that just joined us, if you want to answer the poll question that's up right now, we greatly appreciate it. It looks like most of our folks are compliance, and then we've got a good chunk from management company, and then quite a few from on-site staff, and then a couple owners with us today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in the interest of time. We know you guys are busy and we don't want to take up more than what is necessary. We appreciate, we appreciate you joining us again. And there we go. Let me share the right. Can y'all see my PowerPoint now? Okay, perfect. So we have rolled out a new entrance interview questionnaire. This is now called the Monitoring Review Questionnaire, and it is much more involved on your end versus being kind of short and sweet like the old one was. So we wanted to give you guys a real life walkthrough of that. So as always, here is our contact information. We've got our mailing address, our physical address. The website is going to be your best resource and tool. We've got our contact list on there. You can reach out to a monitor if you have questions. And if we aren't able to answer the questions with regards to this, especially, we can get you to the right person. If you do need to reach out by phone, you can dial either of those phone numbers, or you can dial the monitor's direct phone number. The way this is going to work, and this is 100% dependent on you guys, we are going to run the training from 9, and then we've got the room reserved until 3. We'll take a break in the morning and the afternoon if we need to, and then we'll break for lunch if we need to. But if you guys have all your questions answered and we're good to go by 10:30, then we're going to be done at 10 or 10:30. So there's really not. This is kind of a free-falling training. We're just going to get it going and see where it takes us. So certificates will not be given for this webinar. We are recording it, and it will be available on the department website. There will be a listserv announcement that goes out for this. We would strongly urge you to silence your phones, put an out of office email so that you can focus on this one. I know a few of you have already started seeing this with your December notifications. So those of you that have seen it have seen how involved it is and how lengthy it is. So the most attention you can give this right now, I think, is going to be the best that you can to help you in the long run with this. And again, you can pose your questions in the questions box, or you can raise your hand to ask a question during the webinar. While Amy is talking, I'm going to be watching the raised hands, and I'll unmute you to ask questions. We want you to ask them. We're going to go really section by section for the new questionnaire, and we want you to ask the question when we're in that section so that we can you know, get all your burning questions answered, and we can show you in real time, in real life. We're also going to talk a little bit about the new notification that you'll start seeing probably with the January reviews, I think. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about how to update the unit status report, because we still have some questions about that and some areas where that could probably be clarified. So we updated the entrance interview questionnaire that went out or went live this week. This now is going to be known as the monitor review questionnaire, and it's going to be used in lieu of the old entrance interview questionnaire. So for you folks that have been copying those from previous reviews, this time you're going to have to kind of shift how that process works. And like I said, this is going to be a live walkthrough of the new reporting requirements, and then a brief reminder of how to update the unit status report and what the new notifications will look like. So you'll get there the same way you got to the old entrance interview questionnaire. You'll go to your property listings, and then you'll select unit status report. And if you are a compliance person, you probably have more than one property. If you're an on-site person, you probably only have one. You are then going to go to unit status reports at the top after you click it on the property listing, and that's going to get you to the reporting page. You're going to want to scroll down just like before to get to the monitor review questionnaire. I feel like most of you know where to find this, so I'm not trying to rush through this, but if you do have questions, feel free to type them. So you'll have your monitor review questionnaire, and you'll see where it says start, edit, or view before submission. So this would be a new one, and you can ignore the dates on this particular one. You will click that, and that is where Amy is going to take over. So let me assign her the presenter. Does it let you share your screen, Amy?
I don't know. I have to unmute first, or else I can't have all this stuff going on. Okay.
Done.
Good. Okay, look at us. Look at us in technology. Okay, everybody, thank you again for joining us. A couple of things I want to point out before we get started. We're going to start with the new notification letter because the entrance interview, or now monitoring review questionnaire, has changed. Our notification is going to change. That big long notification that gave you all the things you needed to submit is now going to look slightly different. So we're going to talk about that first. But before I start that, there's a couple things I want to bring up. Number one, please be patient with us in the next week, month, couple weeks, whatever it's going to take as we go through promoting this in CMTS. Many of you who have been...
Can't hear you. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Never mind.
Many of you who have been around for a while know that CMTS is not the quickest system, so it takes a little bit. Promotion has begun of this. Some of you have already started to see it. Some of you have already started to see it with errors. Those have all been addressed, and when promotion is completed, it will be corrected. So please know a couple things. Be patient with us during promotion, and in return, we're going to be patient with you at the first little bit of the submission and learning this new system. So you will have less failure to submit pre-on-site documentation unless you are completely ignoring us. But if you have questions, please reach out to the monitor who you're getting your notification from, and they should be able to walk you through this. And if they can't, they will have you reach out to me. Second thing is, if you do come across errors as this becomes a new thing, please let me know. You can send me an email directly and let me know of any errors that you get or any changes that you might think would be beneficial in this. We're not going to be able to promote any big changes. Like if you're like, I don't think we should answer this question, or I think this question should be this. Right away, we're going to wait for a little bit, gather some feedback, and then make some changes. So don't expect your suggestions to be implemented immediately, but please do email me any suggestions that you may have about this. Lastly, I want to thank everybody for their patience with this. This is a huge change from our previous one, but the previous one was no longer really relevant to getting us ready to come out to monitor. And our notification letter was just getting longer and longer and longer and asking for more and more things. So we have changed that. So starting with the notification letter, and also if this is, these are real properties, but they are on a stage, so a fake CMTS, so you are not having a review if this is you and you are watching, and this is not the answers to your entrance interview questionnaire, and I'm not messing up anything in your CMTS, but we can play with live real properties in what we call stage or the background of CMTS that doesn't affect real CMTS. So your notification is going to look the same at the beginning. Remember, it's going to tell you the date and approximate time. Please always remember, we can't ever stress this enough, that this is an approximate time that the monitors will be visiting. And remember that usually we're there that entire week. And so sometimes we might come a day early or a day late or half a day. So please, we always talk about that in every training when we talk about this, but it's important to remember because we are on the taxpayer's dollar when we are out there. So it is important that we are efficient and use state time efficiently. So we need to complete our reviews, and sometimes that requires us to be a little bit early or a little bit late, depending on what's going on. So please be flexible. What is not acceptable is to say, my compliance staff is not here, so you can't come. We're coming anyways. If there's a big reason why we can't come, please be honest and let us know. We can try to work with you for that. Come early or come late, but somebody not being there on the day before is not a reason why we will not come there. The next thing is, here's where it's going to look different. The notification is now going to tell you to submit just two things: the entrance interview questionnaire and the unit status report. And it's going to give you the due date. That due date is still the due date for any of the attachment stuff. But now your monitoring review questionnaire is going to tell you what needs to be attached. And then of course, it's going to tell you on the day of the review, we need to see resident files. So other than that, this is what your notification is going to look like. It's going to be very simplified. Do we have any questions that we need to have right away about the new notification before we go into the monitoring review questionnaire?
Nothing right now.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and start talking about the new monitoring review questionnaire. I'm still sharing my screen, so I think you can see this now. So it has went from, I think the old one was like 38 questions, if I remember. So now we're at like hundreds of questions. Not really. Oh yeah, we are into the hundreds, like 138 questions. But not every one of them is going to pertain to your property. So you need to make sure that whoever is submitting this knows the property and knows the information. This is our number one issue with our current questionnaire, is the person who is submitting it may not be the person who knows exactly what's going on. So if you are the one who is responsible for submitting this for your on-site review, if you don't know an answer, you should probably find out from somebody who does know an answer at your development or about your development, because depending on your answers depends on what you need to submit, and failure to submit documentation that is required will be in the future, not right now, we will have a little bit of a bumper guide, but will be failure to submit pre-on-site documentation. So it is important that you know the right answers to know what you need to submit. So the first thing that it tells you is to please answer all the questions based on your response. If the instructions below that question require you to submit through the attachment system in CMTS, please do as evidence of compliance with the requirement. And then we broke this down into sections. So the first section is contact information. So it is going to be all about the contact information in CMTS. And when I'm going to go through and answer this entrance or monitoring review questionnaire, I have to get used to calling it that. I am going to answer it with the most common answers that are out there. But if at any time you want me to do something different or answer it in a different way just to see how it reacts, please let Kara or Carolyn know, and I will be happy to change an answer so we can see what that looks like. So the first question is, in CMTS, is the contact information of the owner representative, management company, and on-site manager true and correct? I'm going to say yes, but if it was a no, it's telling you to go into CMTS and please update this information. Why is this information so important to us at TDHCA? It is important to us because a lot of times, especially, let's talk about coming out to do your review, the number one thing that is important to us is that on-site manager. Yes, the owner representative and the management company is also important, but that on-site manager's name and the phone number for the property is critical to us. I can't tell you how many times I've been out on site and I am going to be early and I go to make a phone call to the number that is listed in CMTS and ask for an on-site manager, just to either be told that's not the manager there anymore and now it's Karen, it's no longer John, now it's Karen, and then, or I make a phone call and it goes to the management company and not to the on-site because the phone number in there is for the management company's corporate office. And I get a switchboard operator who has no idea how to connect me to the property, and I need to call the asset manager who's not there because she's out on property, and here is a cell phone number, and I don't have time for that. I am in a car or I'm at my last review and I'm just trying to do a courtesy call to let you know I'm coming, and if I can't do that, then surprise, I'm there. So it is a good idea to make sure that is all updated. Plus, our new rules do require that we have separate and correct contact information for all three of these entities. So please make sure that that is in compliance. Number 2 asks if the department is conducting the monitoring review on site. So this means we're not doing a desk review. We're coming out on site. Has the on-site staff been made aware of this visit? So that should be yes. If it is no, please make sure that your on-site staff knows the approximate date and time that we are coming and that these are approximate. This seems like maybe a silly question, but in the last year, this has become a huge issue for us. I can't tell you how many times I've been at my desk and gotten a phone call from a monitor who's out on site, who's getting yelled at by a manager who has no idea that they were supposed to have a review that day. So in order to avoid this, we want to just make you just a kind of a little reminder when you're filling this out to make sure your on-site staff knows that we're coming. In CMTS, is the name of the development the same as it's known in public? Yes. If not, please update CMTS. We don't want to be looking for Laurel Ridge if your name is now Parkview. So please make sure that it is updated with the correct name as it is known in the public. In CMTS, is the physical address correct? This is important to us because that's the address we put in our GPS to come find you. So if not, please make sure it is updated to the correct address. And number 5, does the development have a leasing office at the physical address? This is important because a lot of times on some of these smaller properties, your leasing office is not at the physical address of the development. Your leasing office is maybe at a sister property or somewhere else. So where are the files? Where is the leasing office? Where do we need to go to conduct this review? So if this is no, they're not kept here. They're kept at what's our address here? 112 East 11th Street in Austin. Then that is the information that we're going to know to go to that correct address. So before I move into reporting, is there any questions or anything that we need, any answers you want me to change and show something different in the contact information section?
We do not have any questions. As far as the address goes, I did want to note that a lot of the newer developments, so when they get set up in CMTS initially, they get set up with a corner of 6th and I-40 in Amarillo, Texas. Well, that doesn't help us. So a full address on those would be a necessity.
Yeah, and just like, again, please update the address in CMTS if it does say like the corner block of 6th and Main and Amarillo. So update it in CMTS. And then once it's updated in CMTS, you can say, yes, that's, you know, if that is where the files are, you can change that to yes. Okay.
We do have a question that just came in.
Okay, great.
If our answer to number 5 is yes, but the files are kept at a central office, do we simply enter that information in number 6?
Yeah, that would be a great, like, so that is a great point. So it does have a leasing office at the address, but you can say files kept at 112 East 11th Street, Austin, Texas. So yes, that is exactly what you should do in that situation. Yes, we have a leasing office, but that's not where the files are.
Okay, there is a hand up. Y'all bear with us. We are going to I have sent you, Marcella, I've sent you an unmute request. You're gonna have to turn your volume on, otherwise we're not gonna be able to hear.
It is on.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, mine's on. I turned it on when I started this because I thought I had mine on. You turned yours off. You probably have to.
Marcella, are you?
Ooh, let me turn mine off and see if you can.
Were you able to unmute?
Mine's on.
You're not muted.
Oh. Oh, wait, I heard something. Okay, when you get her question, if it comes in typed, just let me know. I can always go backwards, don't worry. The next section is reporting. So we're going to talk about, this says, please make sure that you have an accurate and up-to-date unit status report and it has been submitted. So remember, your notice is going to tell you to submit the entrance or monitoring review questionnaire. I'm going to keep doing that. And the unit status report. So this is just a reminder that you do need an accurate, up-to-date unit status report submitted for this review. Then line 7 says, have Forms 8609 been issued by the department? If the answer is yes, then you do nothing. If they've already been submitted, then or issued by you don't have to do anything additional on that question. If the answer is no, it's going to tell you to submit through the attachment system your certificates of occupancy. So if you don't have 8609s, it's going to tell you to submit through your certificates of occupancy. If it says yes, then you're just going to go to the next question that says, are the copies of those 8609s with any of the applicable attachments for each bin already in the CMTS attachment system? So when you look in your attachment system, do you see a line that says 8609s? And if you look at them, are they the complete ones with part 2 completed and any attachments? If the answer is yes, you're done. You're done with this section. If the answer is no, then it's going to tell you to please submit through the attachment system. And if this answer is no, that you have not, then this answer is going to be NA, because you don't have anything there and you don't have anything to submit. So there's 3 different ways you could be answering in there. Any questions about the 8609 submissions or what to do about these answers?
Not that have come in. Nope.
Okay.
I think we're good to keep going.
Okay, so next, the monitoring review questionnaire is going to talk about record keeping. And it's going to ask you, what format are your files stored? Are they stored in electronic, paper, or both? So if it's electronic, you're going to pick electronic. Let's go through this as electronic. And then it says, if paper or both, will the original files be available during on-site? You don't have to answer that. If it's electronic, there is an NA. You can either leave it blank or you can select NA. If you leave it blank, it will still let you submit. But if you want to answer NA, you can. Totally up to you. Blank and NA are both acceptable answers. If electronic, can files be provided with a 24-hour notice in the attachment system? So here we're asking you, if you have an electronic, if all of your files are electronic, they're not paper and both, there's not a combination, they're completely electronic, then our notice is going to change from an on-site review to a desk review. But when we change that to a desk review, we're going to want you to upload your files within a 24-hour period. And if this is something you can't do, this is where you need to tell us, because it's going to depend. If you say yes, the monitor is going to expect the complete file upload in 24 hours after they give you notice of files. If you answer no, then the monitor is going to contact you and tell you, how many files can you upload in 24 hours? If it's only 5, if it's 10, whatever it is, and that's how they're going to break up their unit list. So one day they'll send you 5 files, you'll have 24 hours to upload them. The next day they'll send you 5 more, you'll have 24 hours to upload them. If any units at the development are assisted with 811, has the 11 by 14 inch fair housing poster been displayed in both English and Spanish in the leasing office? If you don't have 811, you can just answer NA or leave it blank. Both are acceptable. If you do, then you either answer yes or you answer no if not, and then you probably want to get that posted immediately. Kind of a little like give me for you for the 811, because that's something we look for. So if you answer no there, you're going to want to definitely turn around and post that so that when we get out there, it's posted. And guess what? You would, even if you answer no here, we're not going to give you non-compliance for that if it's posted when we get there. So this is kind of a little reminder of things that we're going to look for when we're there. So let's go through if this was paper. It says, if paper or both, are the original files available during the on-site? Let's say yes. And then it says, if electronic, again, you can leave this blank or you can answer NA. Up to you, both are acceptable. And let's say I do not have 811, so I'm going to say NA there. Any questions about that before we move forward?
So we have a couple of questions that Carolyn has answered in the chat box. but I think both of them might benefit the group.
Okay.
One question is if the unit status report has a submission date, so this is going back to the notification letter, if the submission date is ready, but it's not quite due yet, maybe the monitor asked for it by December 8th. Can they go ahead and submit it on December the 5th if they are ready to submit it
Oh,
early?
I love this question.
I knew
Let
you
me
would.
tell you why I love this question. Because Carapoli is the reason why we have this question. So your monitors will be requesting a unit status report either as of the end of, let's pretend it is due, what does our notification say? It is due, this one is due December 9th. But this monitor did it correctly and asked for it for occupancy as of November 30th, which means you can submit that anytime between when you got this notice on the 2nd and the 9th when it is due, because you don't have to wait for some ridiculous occupancy date, Kara.
I like ridiculous dates.
Some of the monitors do say occupancy as of the date of their monitoring or their notification as well. Either one is acceptable because that means you can submit it as of the date of the notification or with occupancy as of the last date. Either one of them is okay. And if you have a monitor, Kara, who gives you a date that is like the day of December 9th, you can always submit it before, yes. But Kara will not be doing that anymore.
No, I'm going to pick the 2 months prior.
Okay.
I'm just going to pick arbitrary dates. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So the next question is, what if the 8609s are in the attachment system, but part of a previous pre-on-site documentation submission for a file review? Do they need to say yes to question 8? Should they re-upload? What's the process there?
You can say yes, that they are in there because the monitor should have pulled them out and put them on a separate line. We've been trying to do that. Now, if it's an older review, we've been trying to do that for the last couple years. So we've probably caught a lot of them. But if it's an older review and you say yes, the monitor should know, okay, these are submitted somewhere in here and I'm probably going to have to look in older reviews. And what they're probably going to do is pull them out of that older review and submit them as a separate line item on in CMTS in the attachment system. And just kind of an FYI for the future of the attachment system, right now we're going through a lot of big changes in CMTS, but one of the ones that we're all very excited about is we're going to be able to pin things at the top of the attachment system. So like your land use restriction agreement, your 8609s for sure will be pinned at the top. So we won't have to, you won't have to, and we won't have to continually scroll through there to try to find what line item these 8609, they'll just be at the top of every time you go into the attachment system, which will be nice for us and you, hopefully. And maybe your most recent utility allowance or something like that, we can pin up there too. So that makes it really easy. We haven't decided, we know the LURA and the 8609s for sure, probably the most current utility allowance as well. We'll keep pinned up there. Anything else that you guys can think of that would be benefited to be pinned up there, let us know. Maybe we haven't come up with a full list, but we know those are definitely going to be pinned items. Yes, so you should answer yes, that they're there and the monitor will know to find them in there.
So the next question we have is if we have both paper and electronic files, but a large amount of units, will they require a large amount of files to be scanned in a day?
So if you have both paper and electronic, what that means to us is Unit 101's file has both a paper version and electronic version. It does not mean that you are in the process of scanning your files to electronic and you just haven't from paper where you're shredding all the paper and you're just going strictly electronic. That is like a process you're going through and you could just kind of reach out to your monitor if you're in the process of moving from paper where you're scanning everything and you're going to be completely electronic and you're shredding all your paper and you get a notice of on-site review, you can pick both paper or electronic, whatever, but then I would also send an email to your monitor and let them know, like, where are you in that process? How many, and then we can make a decision if it's going to be an on-site or if it's going to be a desk review. But both in the answer of this means that Unit 101 both has an electronic version of their file that we keep as backup and a paper version. And both means we are going to come out and do the actual on-site. We would not be doing that as a desk review, and we would not be splitting that up to, like, we're going to do this much as a desk review and this much as an on-site. It's one or the other. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And that gets us caught up. We don't have any raised hands or any more questions.
Okay. So next we are going to talk about ownership. And the ownership is just one question. And has there been an ownership change in the last 12 months? This is usually a no, but if the answer is yes, if it has happened and it was not approved by the department, you want to immediately contact your the asset management division at the department. And again, this is kind of a give me, we're coming out, and if you've had an ownership change and it wasn't approved, you're going to have some non-compliance. So if this is a no in this, then you want to contact them right away to avoid non-compliance. Or if this is a yes, if this is a yes, then you're going to want to contact them right away. But if most of the time this is a no, you usually are pretty good about letting us know there's an ownership change. And then we're going to talk about additional marketing requirements. So our land use restriction agreements have 3 different areas that you could be required to do some additional marketing outside of affirmative marketing. The first one is special needs housing. So if your land use restriction land use restriction agreement requires you to have a certain number of units held for special needs households. Remember, special needs is not your accessible units. Yes, a special needs household can live in an accessible unit, but I'm not asking you how many accessible units you have. I'm asking you how many special needs households, how many individuals at your development are special needs. So if your LURA requires that, the answer is yes. And it says, if you are not currently meeting that, does your LURA permit good faith efforts to affirmatively market to persons with disabilities? So that question is saying, if I am required to have 8 special needs households at my development, and I currently only have 4, so I don't have 8, I only have 4. The land use restriction agreement says it will not be non-compliance if you are affirmatively marketing to persons with disabilities. And we will say that those other 4 that you're missing, as long as you're marketing them, that this is not non-compliance. But the compliance division no longer monitors your affirmative marketing plan. So in order to make sure you're in compliance with this, a lot of times we just need to see your outreach to those persons with disabilities to make sure that you're doing this. So let's use that example. Yes, my LURA requires me to have 8 special needs households. So I'm going to answer yes. But I only have 4. So I'm going to answer yes, I am affirmatively marketing to persons with disabilities. And then here it's going to tell you that you need to submit through the attachment system your marketing efforts to persons with disabilities. So now let's think about, if I was filling this out, I probably would have a little piece of paper next to me, because so far this thing has told me that I need to submit my unit status report, but my notification also said this, but this is the first time that I'm going to have to go into the attachment system. I've answered a question and it is triggering me to attach something for my pre-on-site review, and that is my marketing to persons with disabilities. So I would write that down so that I know it. And I just wrote it down on my paper here because I just want to double check, because at the end it's going to give you an action list and it should list all of the things that you answered. So our action list should tell us that we need to do this. Now your action list is not going to print, and we'll talk about the action list when we get to the bottom. So you need to pay attention to your action list at the end of this. It will not print with the saved version of this. The next question about additional marketing requirements is, if the development is for seniors or elderly persons, what is your specific age requirement? So let's say I do have an elderly development and I am housing 52 plus, and that is in my written policies and procedures. Next, it says, does the land use restriction agreement, line 17, for the development require marketing to veterans through direct marketing or contacts with veterans organizations? Let's say yes. My land use restriction agreement does require that. And here again is our next thing. It's saying, if yes, submit through the attachment system your marketing to vets. So now I'm going to write down, I also have to submit my marketing to veterans. And then 18, does the land use restriction agreement, this is a new requirement. So if you are an older development and you have not, I think this is our 2021 funding has this. If you were funded before 2021, this was in our 2021 QAP, so you may have this in your land use restriction agreement if you're a new development, but older developments will not have this. This is new, but it says, does the land use restriction agreement require setting aside and marketing to a certain number of units for continuum of care or homelessness? And so let's just say yes. And this one is going to ask us to tell us what units are occupied by persons from a COC or homeless. So let's say 101 and 302. And then here it's going to say, submit through the attachment system evidence of these marketing. So you also have to show us, not only do you have to set aside a certain number of units, but you need to continue to market these units to your COCs and homeless. So now I'm going to say that I need to submit the marketing for COC and my homeless outreach. Any questions about the additional marketing? I'm sure there is.
Yes. So a couple of them we answered in the chat, but I still want to read one of those out loud because I think it might be something that other folks are having a question on. If you have an ownership transfer in process before a monitor schedules a visit, but the process is not complete, is that going to be an issue of non-compliance?
No.
Okay. The next question is, are we able to come back to the questionnaire? So we started it, we realized we didn't have enough time to finish it, we walked away. Are we able to come back to that, or do we need to complete it all at once?
You can come back. Matter of fact, if I stopped right now and went down here to the very, very bottom and hit save, make sure you hit save, or else if you just click close up here, it will not save. But if you hit save, it will save it. And when you open it back up, all the things you answered will be answered, and anything that's blank will be blank. So you can absolutely do that.
Okay. So is there somewhere in this new questionnaire that we can note that our waiting list is closed for the marketing materials submission? The marketing materials you're talking about don't have any bearing on that.
Right.
Correct?
Yes. So additional marketing requirements do not follow the same rules of you do not have to market if your wait lists are closed. That is only for affirmative marketing. Unless your land use restriction agreement specifically states that, and I have never seen one that says if your wait list is closed, you don't have to market to special needs or veterans or the COC homeless. So if your LURA says that, then you can, there's no place on here for you to submit, but you can always upload a cover letter for your pre-on-site that says, my LURA says that if my wait list is closed, I do not have to market to this veterans group. Then if you have a special LURA that says that, then just put that in your cover letter, upload in CMTS with your pre-on-site documentation. And the monitor is also reading the land use restriction agreement, so they also know that if that is in there, and they would know not to monitor for that.
So the next question is, what if the LURA does not require a special needs number of units, but we've been told that we still have to market to persons with disabilities through affirmative marketing. How do you answer those questions?
So that is a true statement. Matter of fact, our rules were designed to protect you from noncompliance with special needs in your land use restriction agreement and to comply with fair housing. So you're kind of double covered under us. We very rarely write up special needs because of the affirmative marketing rule. So let's say that's the case. Let's say you don't have this requirement. So you're going to say no. But you, and then here you would just say NA because you are required to affirmatively market to persons with disabilities, but it is not to meet that special needs requirement. So that you have to separate in your head affirmative marketing and additional marketing. So affirmative marketing, you have to follow everything in that affirmative marketing rule. Additional marketing is extra things that your LURA requires you to, extra outreach that your LURA requires you to reach out to. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we just got asked how much documentation, and I know Carolyn answered this in the chat, but I think this is another beneficial one because I get asked this a lot. How much documentation should be submitted to document marketing to special needs or veterans groups? Is it a quarter? Is it the whole year? Is it the most recent before the notification? What is it?
Definitely it should be before the notification, but I only need to see one in the last 12 months. That's it. Something that shows that you did it at least once in the last 12 months. So that's all. I don't need, if you do it every quarter, great, that's really better, but I only need to see that you did it once in the last 12 months for any of these categories.
That gets us caught up.
Okay. All right, now we're going to talk about tenant files. And this one is, if any tenants are assisted by Section 811, are the files kept in a secure location with restricted access for only EIV people who have rules of behavior, security training, and only officially need access to that information. So this one, I already have a note that in the future we're going to fix this. There is no NA on here. So if you don't have 811, just keep it blank. If you do have 811, you definitely want this to be yes. If when you go to answer it, it's a no that you have not done that, that's another give me. This is another one that we're telling you, we're going to look for this. So make sure if that's a no, that by the time we get out there, this should be a yes, because no matter what you answer on here, the non-compliance is triggered when we get out there, right? So if you're like, oh no, I don't have them in a locked cabinet in a restricted area, then you're going to want to put them in a locked cabinet in a restricted area before we come out to review. But if this is yes, you do have 811 and your stuff is locked up, then you also want to tell us what are your 811 assisted units. So 206, 505, 409, 302. Those are my assisted 811 assisted units. Then the next one is if any of your tenants are assisted by the departments. So please remember, you are only answering questions on this about the department's funding. So it's the department's home, the department's TCAP RF, TCAP repayment funds, National Housing Trust Fund, NHTF, or our new home art program. And you were awarded this funding after August 23rd, 2023. Do you have any leases that are between an organization and a landlord instead of between the tenant and the landlord? Again, this is another give me for you guys. If the answer is yes, when we come out there, that's going to trigger non-compliance. So you want the answer to be no. And if it is yes, you're going to want to address this before we go out there and pull those files. Otherwise, you can say NA, or again, if you leave it blank, blank is just as good as NA in this scenario. So I'm just going to answer NA. If the tenants are assisted by the department's Neighborhood Stabilization Program, NSP, are they using a master lease? If the answer is yes, then that's going to make us really look at that because that is going to trigger non-compliance. So a lot of these are clues about what we're looking at when we come out there. If the answer is no, you're going to be in compliance. If you don't have NSP, you can have a blank or again, an A. Either is sufficient. And then for housing tax credit, it's going to ask you if any tenants that were assisted by the department's housing tax credit program and units have been leased to an organization for supportive housing program. If they have the units been vacant for more than 60 days and the development received rental payment? Again, it's a clue. So you're either going to say, yes, this has happened, which would be non-compliance, or no, this has not happened. And or you're going to say, I don't have this. I don't have any housing tax credit units that are leased to an organization or supported housing program. So you can leave that blank or have an A. If it's yes, you're going to want to tell us what units those are. Next, it's going to ask if you have the tenant's rights and resource guide posted in your leasing office. We are telling you exactly what we're looking at. This is the most transparent. If you answer this and go through this and you really pay attention, you know what we're going to be monitoring for. You can get ready for our monitoring review. So you say yes, that's great. And then this says, if this monitoring review is a desk review, not an on-site. So if we're telling you to submit files and not submit an on-site review, or we're not coming on-site, you're asking you to upload files, we're going to want you to attach a copy of that into CMTS. So that will be your next trigger in your action item. And then it's going to ask you what your development was built. So that is tenant files. Do we have questions about tenant files?
We don't have any. Oh, we do have a question about it. One thing I want to add on the desk review tenant rights and resources guide. If you have to submit that, please submit the document, not a photo of it hanging on your wall. We need to actually look at it as if we were on site. I get that a lot, and I email, and it's just a candid audience. So I thought this was a good place.
Yeah, it's just take it down, scan it in, and you're fine.
We've got somebody that's asking about an example of an organization for a supportive housing program.
You can email Kara or myself or Carolyn about that. That is kind of specific, and we really just kind of want to talk about how this entrance interview questionnaire is working. And if you need to know about supportive housing programs or what that looks like, I'll be happy to kind of have like a side conversation with that. So we don't get too deep into personal and property specific things in this training. And Kara, you put our emails on there?
I didn't, but I will.
She'll put her emails in the chat.
So the next question is, we are scattered sites and not just one development. How do I put in multiple build dates? I would say use the oldest.
Oh yeah, just use the oldest. Yeah, that's fine.
I think that catches us up. Carolyn, are you seeing anything else?
Okay, now we're going to go into the section where you are going to want to cry, and this is going to be the hardest one, and it's going to be the hardest one for everybody to get used to, but it is the most important one. So everybody who didn't care about any of this other stuff, it seemed like just like a kind of revision of the old stuff. Here's where it gets new and it gets deep. We're going to talk about utility allowances. This, first of all, is the #1 thing that is answered incorrectly on the current entrance interview questionnaire. I do not know how many times I have seen someone say that they have the actual use method, and then I pull up the pre-on-site documentation and it's a written local estimate. I'm like, what? This is not actually, so you have to know what method you have. Remember, the person answering this has to know this information. And if they don't, they better find out who it's coming from, because you do not want to say you have a PHA and you don't have a PHA. And there's going to be questions that you can skip here if you have certain things, and questions that you have to answer if you don't. So you really need to know about your utility allowances. So let's start into this. Are the tenants required to pay for utilities? This is electric, gas, water, sewer, and trash, not phone, cable, and internet. If the answer is yes, it's going to say, please answer questions 29 through 86. So if you answered yes here, you need to answer questions 29 through 86. If you answer no, guess what? You get to skip those because this means that it is all bills paid. The owner is paying for everything. So you get to skip all the way to question 86, which is social services. So you don't have to answer any of the questions, okay?
Perfect world.
But we don't really have a whole lot of owner pays all bills. So let's say yes. The residents are responsible, so we need to answer these questions. The first one is, since your last monitoring review, have the utilities paid by the tenant changed? So in a lot of cases, this is a no, so I'm going to start with no, but if we want to, we can go back and say yes and look at what that looks like. Then the other are just saying if so, if so. So this is if the utilities paid for by the tenant had changed, which ones change, or which ones do they pay for now that they did not pay for at the last review, and which ones do they no longer pay for. So we want to make sure that we are aware of which ones they pay, which ones they don't pay. Since the last monitoring review, so if that's a no, these are just blank. Since the last monitoring review, has the utility allowance method changed? I'm going to answer yes, because this does happen. So a lot of times people are using written local estimate and then they switch to HUD model, or they're using HUD model and they switch to PHA. So it says, if so, please answer here from what to what methodology. So from here, I'm going to say I went from a written local estimate to a PHA. Now I need to know your building types. Do you have single family homes, duplexes, row houses, townhouse, triplex, fourplex, low rise 2 to 4, a large apartments 5+. So we need to know what your building types are, and they're all listed here. So let's say I have apartments 5+. Which buildings do these identify? Say all of my buildings are apartment 5+. I'm just going to say all buildings. And then guess what? I'm going to skip the other types. So I don't have to answer 5+ all buildings, 5+ all buildings, 5+ all buildings. That is just for, say I have 5+ as in buildings 1, 5, and let's say 1 and 5, 1 and 5. And then let's just say that I have multifamily 2 to 4 in buildings 2, 3, and 4. So, and then I don't have any others. I'm going to skip that. So 42. Are the units at the development assisted by USDA's rural development? If the answer is yes, then we want to know what buildings or units. Let's say all buildings are USDA, so RD. The next thing is going to tell you, submit through CMTS the 3 most current years worth of utility allowance for USDA. And once you have done that, it doesn't tell you this, but you're done with utility allowances and you get to attach your USDA and skip all the way down to supportive services. So that is one thing. And probably on the next update, we'll add something after that that says, after attach, skip to supportive services or line 86 or whatever that is. But if you are USDA, this is where it ends. So say you're not USDA, say no, and you're not going to answer that. And then the next question is, are any of the units in the development assisted with a HUD program, such as project-based Section 8 or public housing? Yes. If this is project-wide, then you're going to say all buildings. And then it's going to tell you again to submit the last 3 years of the approved HUD utility allowance in CMTS. And again, if this is the scenario, you are done and can skip. Once you've attached, you can skip to supportive services. But if this is no, you don't have any HUD assisted. The next question is, if you have multiple HUD programs, sorry, I skipped that one. If you have multiple HUD programs, please provide details over here and all applicable utility allowance schedules. So I just had one that I prepped that was like, we have a RAD and project-based vouchers. So then I would know, make sure everything is submitted and you're done. You still get to skip to the thing. But if you have multiple, that's where we want to know about your multiple HUD funding. The next question is, are any of the units in the development assisted with the home program not through the department? So not our home, but through the department or through another PJ. So say you have Travis County Home Funds. Say, yes, I have Travis County Home Funds. What buildings? Oh, these are only in buildings 1 and 5. So now I know that. And you're going to want to submit the 3 most current years from that participating jurisdiction. And you don't get to skip. You got to keep going because it's only in buildings 1 through 5. But if it was all buildings, then you get to submit and skip. Next is, did the development elect to use the Public Housing Authority methodology? If it is yes, then we want you to submit the last 3 years of the public housing PHAs to us, and you do not get to skip. This is the only way that you do not have to skip the next lines 50 through 86 is, well, the only way you can skip that, if all buildings are USDA, if all buildings are HUD, or if all buildings are assisted under another home programs PJ, then you get to skip the rest of the lines to supportive services. But if not all buildings, say just 2 buildings are USDA, then you have to answer the rest because there's another utility allowance on your other buildings issued by us. If you are not all HUD assisted, so the one that I was just talking that I was prepping for, they had RAD. So let's say, yes, we have all buildings except building 4. And they have RAD and PBV. And so in this scenario, they don't get to skip all the way to supportive services because I need to know what the other utilities are for building 4. So they don't get to skip. The only way you get to skip is if you have USDA, HUD, or home from another PJ in all buildings. And you do not get to skip if you have public housing. You have to answer the next questions if you have public housing. So before I get into the actual utilities, is there any questions about this part of utility allowance?
The one we just got. Okay, I may have missed it. There's some confusion on what to answer yes for on 42 and 44. We've got 2 questions about it. What if your utility allowance is from HUD, but USDA approves it? Would you say yes to 42 and 44? Carolyn wrote in the chat that yes, you would, because they both kind of matter. The next question we have that's kind of in the same vein is, if we only have tenant-based Section 8 vouchers, is the answer no for number 44?
Yes, yes. So vouchers are a HUD program, but they do not HUD regulate your building. What we're trying to establish here is if you have a HUD regulated building, because if you have a HUD regulated building, the only utility allowance that is allowable for that building is the HUD approved utility allowance. So if you have housing choice voucher holders, they do not HUD regulate your building. They HUD regulate the unit they're in, but they do not HUD regulate your building. So you would just either leave that blank or say no. That is only if you have HUD funding where HUD sends you a utility allowance, an approved utility allowance. Anything else in that part?
No, a couple folks wanted to know how to determine their building type, but we have a very detailed training about utility allowances that goes into that. And I put that link in the chat to our presentation.
Yeah, and your building type, really, for the most part, we have documentation about this in CMTS as well. But really, for the most part, you're going to know if you have 5 or more units in your building, your apartment 5+. The only ones that get tricky are going to be the townhomes, 4-plex, and multifamily 2 to 4. Those can kind of get tricky, but honestly, as a monitor looking at this, I'm going to know this by looking at your unit status report. I'm going to know it by looking at stuff in CMTS. And so say you're a multifamily 2 to 4 and you answer 4-plex. It's not going to ruin my world or cause non-compliance. Or if you are a townhome and you answer multifamily 2 to 4, not going to kill me. You know, like I'm going to be able to figure that out as a monitor. Really, the 2 most important is just tell me if you are 5+ units or if you are one of these other townhomes or single room occupancy. Or a house. Sometimes we do have some of them that are out there like a house, but and sometimes your PHA even calls your apartment 5+. Sometimes they call it, I've seen it called garden. So you might have garden high rise. So the type isn't going to trigger any type of non-compliance. Really, we just need to know the purpose of this section is if you have more than one building type and you're using PHA, am I looking at the 2 PHA schedules that are for the right building types? That's the most important thing. For your written local estimate, your HUD model, anything calculated by us, by HUD, by RD, they're already going to know this. We've already done a little bit of research on that. You've already submitted a questionnaire. This is mostly for when you're using PHA so that the monitor knows, hey, there's going to be 2 different PHA schedules in here, one for 5+, one for garden high rise because, or one for multifamily 2 to 4, because that's how my PHA publishes them. And that's what my building types are. I have buildings that are 2 to 4, like townhome units, and then I have apartment 5+. Does that make sense? Does that help with that? That's not gonna, the buildings are important. What buildings are different, that's important, the building numbers, so that we kind of know that. But it's mostly for our PHA. Any other questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to get into utilities, and this can get a little tedious because we're asking the same questions over and over and over and over and over again, but we need to know the answers to these. So we're going to start with the heating of the unit. Who pays this? Tenant. For the most part, this is what we see. I'm going to use the most common thing that we have here, and we're going to go through all of these for this. So the tenant. If the tenant pays, is it directly to the utility provider, directly to the owner, or to the owner through a third-party billing company? So we usually see it directly to the utility provider. And this box is only if it is directly through the owner and you are using the ratio billing system, then tell us how much you're charging per unit. So let's pretend that it's directly to the owner and you're using a ratio billing system and you're saying 3 bedrooms are charged 100, 2 bedrooms are charged 50, and 1 bedrooms are charged 25. So, and this is just based on unit size. So, oops, I hit something there. Based on unit size. So this is just based on unit size. This is how your owner wants to break it down. Sometimes the bill is more and the owner pays up the rest. Sometimes the bill is less and the owner makes a little on the, to make up for the months that it doesn't. But he just did it based on unit size, not based on the bill. Or you can say changes monthly based on actual development billing. And then we would want you to attach in CMTS any of your backup and to back up this explanation, no matter how it is. Sometimes that is just a rent roll if it's like the per bedroom charge. And if it's a monthly charge, there should be some kind of monthly spreadsheet that you're keeping to make sure that you're not overcharging rent on a monthly basis. And we would want to see that. And yes, we would want to see a full 12 months. But in the most part, these are paid directly to the provider or to the owner through a third-party billing company. Either one of these is what we usually see. But let's say this is directly to the owner, so we would keep 52 blank. So 53 says, if the tenant pays, what is the method? So we're going to say PHA. And is this heating of the unit, since the tenant pays it, is it gas or electric? It's electric. And if the tenant pays and it's electric, is it a resistance or a heat pump? Most of the time we see resistance. If you don't know, it's not going to be a big deal. Please do not freak out about this one. The only reason why this question is there is we do have some PHAs that do have 2 published for electric. Most of our PHAs only publish straight electric. Some of them have electric resistance and electric heat pump. And if it is, we do need to know because there is a big difference in that number. And so we need to know if you're calculating based on resistance or heat pump. So if your PHA does not publish it and it's just electric, guess what? You can just leave that blank. You don't even have to answer resistance or heat pump. If the PHA schedule just says electric and that's what you're using, just leave it. Or if you're using written local estimate, any of the approved ones from us, so any of these other ones, you can leave it blank.
We need it for the HUD model.
Well, you already get it, not for when we go on site.
Oh, yeah. I apologize for that.
So they'll already know that when they calculate it for the HUD model and for all the other stuff. They've already looked at that with your utility allowance questionnaire. So say this was energy consumption model, electric, you can leave that blank. It's not going to trigger anything. This is just, the only time you need to answer that question is if you have a PHA and it has both listed, tell us what you're using so we're calculating the same as you. And now we're going to go to cooking. So again, same questions. Who pays? Tenant pays. Is it paid directly through the utility provider, owner of the building, or through RUBS? Same thing. So same as what is before. And what is the methodology? We're going with PHA. And is it gas or electric? We're going with, let's say this one is gas. Then other electric, who pays? The tenant. Is it paid directly to the utility provider? Let's say it's paid to or through the owner of the building, because I think, oh no. Go directly to the utility provider. And what method? PHA, air conditioning, tenant, direct or utility provider, PHA. And is it refrigerated or evaporated cooling? Again, this is the same as that resistance or heat pump. This is only if your PHA publishes both, yeah, or you're in El Paso, basically. This is for El Paso. But if your PHA publishes both refrigerated air, which just will say simply air conditioning, or evaporated cooling, which we see a lot in the desert areas. So you might have evaporated cooling. If you don't know, you can leave it blank. It's not going to trigger any type of non-compliance. Water heating, owner or tenant pays. Again, we're going to say directly to the utility provider, PHA, and do you have an individual heater or water system? We're going to go with a boiler system. Let's go with water heater. So then water, let's say the owner pays it, and we can skip all the rest. If the owner pays it, you don't have to answer all the rest. Sewer, owner pays it, skip all the rest of the questions. Trash collection, owner pays it, we don't need to answer the rest of the questions. So there is an example of that very crazy utility section. But this is very helpful to us when we're getting ready to come out there and do it, especially for the PHA method. It's helpful on the other methods just so that we can make sure that we're looking at the right calculation when we look at especially written local estimate, because we're checking at that point to make sure that all the stuff for written local estimate is right. Because remember, the utility allowance team is just saying you've met your annual requirements. So we need to make sure everything's good on that. So during our monitoring review, it's important that we know these things. I even look at who pays what as far as utilities, as far as tenant and owner, when I'm looking at a HUD model, just to make sure that when you send it to Kara, Kara didn't say in her HUD model that cooking was electric and not gas. Then I see a discrepancy here, and I might want to go into the utility allowance folder and pull up what was submitted with the utility allowance questionnaire. And then I might have a follow-up questionnaire for you guys about like, what is it? Is electric or gas, to make sure that we have the right calculated utility allowance.
And we see that periodically, Amy. A lot of that goes back to when you initially said, be sure that the person completing this knows what goes on at the property, and make sure the person completing your utility allowance questionnaire knows what's going on at the property. So that's where everybody has to be on the same page.
Right. And if you have different methodologies, this is helpful for us too. So here we'll be able to know, like, for example, say your tenant pays for all of these things through written local estimate instead of PHA. You'll see that it never asks you to submit your written local estimate or your other methods. The only methods it's asking you to submit is that RD, the HUD, home from another PJ, or the PHA, because we have copies of all of these. If you have these other ones, right? We're the ones who approved it, so we have copies. But let's say you have two different methodologies. So say you have written local estimate for all of those, and your tenants do pay water, and they pay it through a third-party billing company, and it is paid through and you use the PHA method. So this is going to be great because now we know that we have two different methodologies. We have written local estimate for the gas and the electric that the tenant pays and the utilities that they pay that through. And then we can see that the tenant pays for water and sewer, and they pay it directly to the owner, but through a third-party billing company, which is actual use, right, based on their actual usage. And you're using the PHA method. So now we can see that there are two different utility sources that we should see. The written local estimate should already be in CMTS if you've done your approval by the right time and followed all the rules with that. And we have seen the PHA method for this, and that is going to be a yes up here, and you're going to need to submit your schedule. So if you elect to use the PHA method at 49 is for any of your utilities, not just like, so if you have a mixed use like this, you're still going to want to make sure that gets submitted to us. Any other questions on utility allowances? I thought we'd have a crap ton.
I thought so too. We only had a question about somebody not being able to enter the information on line 53, or any other question asking the same thing, but I think they might have been completing it while we were still working with IT, because this early this week, we've really been working with IT and working with you guys, and we appreciate the patience for sure.
Yeah, there was some questions that in the early, like the promotion started to roll out, and we have monitoring notices going out, and you guys are going in there, and CMTS is trying to promote this new one, and the old one's still there in the background, and so there's a lot of things that are happening. But you should be able to answer all drop downs when the promotion gets finished. And I did get an email this morning from our IT guy that he was starting the final promotion last night. So I don't know if it's fully glitch free yet or not. I don't know how long that promotion is going to take. He said he would email me when it was complete, and I did not have an email yet when we started this. So any other questions about utility allowances?
Nope.
Okay, if you have questions while you're filling this out, remember we're going to be patient for a while with this, but remember at some point we have to rely on your answers to complete our monitoring review. So while we're going to give room for a buffer, please remember that these questions are important. And if you tell me that it's written local estimate and I look in CMTS and there's no written local estimate approval letter from us, then I have non-compliance. And when I get out there and it's like non-compliance and you say, well, I use the PHA. Well, that's not what you told me. And I can only go with what you told me to prepare to come out here. And while I'm there, I'm reviewing files. I'm not recalculating utility allowances. I did all that work before I came out there. So again, I know we're saying this a lot, but it is super important that the person who answers these questions knows the answer, the correct answer to these questions.
So now we've got a question. I think you kind of just answered this. When will we have access to this form in CMTS so we can start reviewing it beforehand? Our review will be sometime mid-year, they think.
Kara, did you put the blank one as an attachment?
I did. The blank one, if you see on your little side panel, it says handouts 1 of 5. The handout there, and you can click it, it'll open it in a web browser, and then you can download it through your web browser. That does have this 14-page document, so you can go ahead and start looking. And I would suggest print it out and maybe start answering some of the ones and just to get familiar with it. And
yeah, the only thing is I think that blank one does have some like for example, that blank one was, I sent that out to our team and we went through it and we made a couple changes. And I think if I can remember right, like the numbering on that blank one is off on social services because we removed questions and added questions. So your numbering might not match on that blank one. But other than that, all the questions should still be there. But if the numbering doesn't match what is in here on the live one, it's because we made a few changes before we pushed it live.
Okay. If we have a past due recertification, actually, I don't think we should answer this. No, never mind.
Okay. That might be an offline question that you can email us at a different point in time.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to supportive services. This is going to be another kind of beast of a section, but it is important that, again, the person who is answering this is the person who understands what is happening with supportive services at your development. And does this mean that the person answering this might have to coordinate with a couple other people? It probably does. I know a lot of you have service coordinators, but you're going to need to make sure you have all of this information because it is critical to avoid noncompliance. Remember, this is going to require you to attach stuff, and what you attach determines if you're in compliance or not. Because we're coming out to our on-site, we're doing the file reviews. We do all of this work in the front end. So we load this up in the front end. Okay, so for supportive services, does the land use restriction agreement require you to provide supportive services to your tenant? Let's say yes, because most of them do. If you are post 15 and your land use restriction agreement said throughout the compliance period and your compliance period was only 15 years, you can leave this blank or answer no. Even if your lawyer requires you to provide them, if your compliance period is over and your land use restriction agreement did not extend that compliance period, you can leave this blank and skip the rest of this. If you are not post 15, then you're probably going to be answering yes to this because all the LURAs have some sort of supportive service requirement. If this is the department's first monitoring review, or the development's first monitoring review. So this is the first time we're coming out there to see you. And not all of your services have been provided. Do you have a plan to provide these specific service dates with specific service dates? Because our rule says if this is the first review and you haven't done all of your services yet, but you have a plan in place that says on this date we're going to do this service and this date we're going to implement this service, then we will accept that and you will be in compliance during your first monitoring review. So if this is your first monitoring review and you have a plan, then you're going to say, yes, again, here's a clue. We're looking for this. If you don't have that, I would suggest when you're filling this out, you get one, because the next thing is going to tell you to upload it. So before your due date, you're going to want to make sure you have a plan and you get it uploaded. And again, it says right there, if yes, submit through CMTS. So now I know I need to submit also my utility allowance stuff, but also my supportive service plan. Then it asks if you have a note, if your LURA requires you to have a notary. Let's say no. If it was yes, then you're going to want to submit your proof of evidence that you have a notary that is available to your tenants during normal business hours. Does your LURA require for your community to make available on a regular scheduled basis to a local nonprofit or government provider of services space to provide outreach services and education to the tenant regarding their health and well-being? If this is yes, then you're going to want to submit that evidence through CMTS. Does the LURA require you? This is for our bond properties. A lot of our bond properties have land use restriction agreements that require them to spend so much money per month on their services. If this is yes, it's going to ask how much is expended. So how much do you spend per month? $3,000. You don't have to do not put any dollar symbols or commas. You're just going to put in the money amount. And then it's going to ask you to provide documentation of those expenses and services. But if you're not bond, you probably do not have this requirement. Again, blank or no is an acceptable answer here. Then it's going to tell us, we want to know what services your LURA is requiring and what event you're doing to satisfy that. We've got up to 12 spaces for you to do that. If you are providing more than 12, then you are more than welcome to, on your pre-on-site upload, to upload the additional ones, and on your cover letter, let us know what these additional ones are and why they're there. But let's just say my LURA requires transportation. And what am I doing to meet the requirement of transportation? I am giving out bus passes. Say my LURA requires financial planning. Then I'm going to say Wells Fargo rep came to help set up checking, savings. Oh my gosh. And IRA accounts. Say I have arts and crafts. And I do monthly projects. That's all you have to do, because I don't need to know what they are. I don't need to know if it's painting, sewing. You have monthly arts and crafts projects. Good enough.
I like to know if it's painting or something.
And you can keep going. There's up to 12 of them here. Enter them in. And then it's going to tell you to submit documentation of each of the services as indicated. So what do you need to submit for this? And this will probably be updated in the future, but we just updated probably about a month ago our actual notification letter, which now is going to change again, to say we don't need a whole year of bus passes, sign-in sheets. I don't need 12 sign-in sheets for bus passes. What would be sufficient for bus passes? If you are providing them on a daily basis, which you should be to meet the requirement, I would say what? 2 weeks of sign-in sheets is probably sufficient. A week, probably sufficient. Financial planning, if this is a quarterly requirement in your LURA, then show me the last 2 quarters. I don't need to see 4 years of financial planning. Arts and crafts, if you're doing monthly projects and you're required to do this on a monthly basis, then I would submit, what, 2 months? 2 months sounds good to me, and it's going to be enough for me to say, yep, they're providing this on a monthly
We got
basis.
3 years yesterday.
Yes.
3 years.
No, I don't need that much. Anywhere from 6 months to, depending on what you are providing, right? So think about, what do I need to give Kara so that she knows that I am doing this and I'm doing it when my LURA says I'm supposed to do it. And that's all we need. And if we need more, we would probably ask for it on the onsite before we would, if something looks shady to me. And by that, I mean, like, if you say I'm doing monthly arts and crafts project and you sent, and my notice says that I want stuff by December 9th, I send it to you December 2nd, and you send me November and October, I'd probably take it. I don't know if I'd go any deeper, but if you send me December and that's it, are you really providing this on a monthly basis, or did you just send me December because I sent you a notification? And so when I come out to see you, I might say, can I see November's arts and crafts and October's arts and crafts sign-in sheets and flyers? So think about it that way. Probably not the month that the notification comes out, but the month prior and the month prior to that, or the quarter prior and the quarter prior to that. So 2 quarters, 2 months, 2 weeks. 2 is a good number.
2 is a good number, I agree. We do have a hand raised with a question. Do you want to jump in that now? Or you want
Sure.
to
Yeah, because services, we're pretty much done with services. So
All right, Alicia, you have the ability to unmute yourself, I believe.
hopefully.
Your volume is on so we can hear her. phone.
No, it was an accident. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
But
we
yay,
know-
we can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Nope.
All right, so that's services, and that way, and this is really going to save you guys from service non-compliance for a couple reasons. A, we've been very lightly monitoring services due to COVID. There were times that we weren't monitoring them at all. Just so you guys know that we're going back to full scale non-compliance being issued, no more technical assistance, no more light touch on these services. Beginning with our January reviews. It's going to be just like pre-COVID reviews. So the best thing you can do is tell us what your service is and what you're doing to instead of, because before we'd be like, just set us your services, and we would have to dig through years worth of stuff and try to say, what is this and what does it go to? Here you're telling us, this is what I'm doing for this service. So it's kind of a good thing for you. It's going to save a lot, hopefully, a lot of non-compliance. So now we're at nonprofits, hubs, and CHODOs. So if your LURA requires ongoing material participation for your nonprofit, your historically utilized business, or your community housing development CHODO, please provide here your written narrative. So you can copy and paste it, type it in, or if you have a hard copy from your CHODO hub nonprofit and you can't copy and paste it or type it in here, you don't have to retype it in here. You can upload it with your pre-on-site documentation. So this is just giving people the opportunity, because I know a lot of people on the old entrance interview questionnaire wanted to type in, and we were like, no, you can't type it in there, you got to upload it. Now we're saying, go ahead, you can type it in here, or you can copy and paste it from your hub, nonprofit, or CHODO here. But if you do have like a hard copy letter, you don't have to retype it. You don't have to try to figure out how to whatever, so you
Okay.
can copy and paste, untexted, unprotected, and so you can copy and paste it, just upload it with your documents like you always did. That is fine as well, as long as we get it. But this is just giving you the option. Any questions on that or anything else we need to go back to?
Nope. And I think just to kind of go back to our housekeeping, we're close to the end of this. I think we're good to not take a break and just keep going unless you need a break.
Let's ask if anybody out there needs a 5 to 10 minute break, 10 to 15, or just go through the rest of this. You guys put in the chat what you want. We'll do whatever they want.
I need a 5-minute. And I'm good with, and then a lot of let's keep going, let's finish. I need a 10-minute break. So it's up to you. I'm
Okay.
putting the ball back in your court.
All right. So I know we're really, really close. Let's just do a quick 10-minute break. It's 10:35. We'll come back at 10:45. We'll probably be out of here by 11:30 at the latest. So before lunch, you guys will be done. But we want to make sure we're going to be here for a while, though, to make sure we get all of your last minute questions. We're in no rush. We just want to be respectful of your time. So let's just take a 10-minute break.
I'm back at 10:45.
10:45, I'll start back up with rents, fees, and units. Okay, everybody. Glad everybody got a little break, and we will keep going. Any questions I need to address before we go into rents, fees, and units? Okay, so I know this is a lot, and I know it seems like it's new, it's different, and it is a lot. I'm not even going to pretend like it is not, but it is vital to make sure that we are doing a thorough on-site and that you guys are prepared for us to do this on-site. So it's helping prepare you guys for us to come out there, and it's helping us prepare to come out to see you. So the next question is, do tenants pay for any amenities, garages, carports, parking spots, storage units? It goes through a whole list here, yes or no. If the answer is yes, please let us know which one they pay and how much. So let's just say carports, $20. Do tenants pay any fees that are a condition of occupancy, such as month-to-month rent, laundry hookup fees, cable, internet, renter's insurance? So this cable and internet, if this is something like they can provide and it gets set up in their own, they have an option to have cable or not have cable, it's optional, then this is a no. This is only if you have cable hardwired into the units and they have no option. They have to pay you or the cable company or whoever $10 a month for this cable. Doesn't matter. That is a condition of occupancy. So, and the other is not. So remember, if they have an option to not have this, then it is not a condition of occupancy. So let's just say no here. But if it was yes, you would just say cable and others. If the development has a housing tax credit or exchange assisted units, does the development charge application fees? Yes. Now it's telling you to submit. Here's another one that's saying submit your invoices from that screening company to evidence this out-of-pocket cost. So I should also have an action item that tells me to submit my app fee documents. And then it's asking you, how much is your application fee? Please provide here the cost for the first person and each additional person. So my first is 20 and my additional is 15. How did you calculate this? My invoice charges 15 per person. Okay. Or if you have, let's say you have the invoice that or not a per person charge, say you have a charge where it's like $245 a month. I don't have like my calculator here, but $245 and I screen, I don't know how many people would I have to screen to get to 15? $13 or 13 people. Oh, but it's a year. It has to be a year. 245 times a year is what? Let's just
2,940.
2,940 divided by how many people to get me to 15?
196.
196 total applicants. That gets me to the $15.
That's why she keeps me around, folks. I'm a walking calculator.
Or she just used the one on her.
You don't know. Can't see the screen.
Then it asks you if you add the 550. Most of you do, so that would make sense. This would all make sense to me if I was reviewing this for pre-on-site. I would say, oh, okay, here's their calculation. They submitted an invoice that shows $245 a month. 245 times 12 is $290. They submitted a report showing me they've ran 196 applications in the last year. That equals $15. $15 plus another $550 is actually $20.50, but they're only charging $20, so I'm good with this. Does the development require a security deposit? Yes. Are they refundable upon move out or transfer? Yes. Is the development current in all program monitoring fees? Have you paid us our compliance monitoring fees? Yes. If not, you need to make arrangements with the finance division. And this is, again, a clue. If you say no and you have not paid them and not made arrangements with our department, we're going to have a finding of non-compliance. Are there any units used for non-residential purposes? Office, maintenance office, property storage, a supportive service center? Do you have any of those units? This should be no, but if it is yes, tell us what units they are and what you're using them for. If you're using 101 for storage, good to know, probably also non-compliance. Are there any units occupied by employees, maintenance, or courtesy officers? Yes, and then let us know. You're going to, for the management and maintenance employee occupied units, submit into CMTS attachment that they are a full-time employee at the development. If they're the courtesy officer, you're just going to list here what they're responsible for. So unit 303 is our courtesy officer. He patrols after his regular duty as a police officer and on the weekend. And then here it's asking if any tenants are assisted by the department's housing tax credit program. So if you're not housing tax credit, then you don't have to answer this. But if it is, and you are past your federal compliance period, that 15-year period, what is the percentage of units leased to a household comprised of entirely full-time students? None. I don't have any. If you're not, you can say NA, you can leave it blank, it doesn't matter. Or if you have 0%, you can leave it 0, you can leave it blank, it doesn't matter, as long as it is. But say you're like, I'm leasing about 10% to full-time students, put it in there, not an issue. Now you've completed this, you're gonna hit save. It's gonna ask, do you wanna save this questionnaire? You're gonna say okay. Oh, I did not wanna go back. But that's okay, I'll sign back in.
So while you're signing in, we've had a couple folks ask if the development is post 15, does the application fee backup need to be uploaded?
No.
The answer is no.
So let's go, if you were post 15, what you would do in that situation. But let me get back in here.
And then another question, would an employee lease work to prove proof of employment? Would that be evidence, or would a statement be evidence to upload to show that it's an employee that lives in an exempt unit? That's the question.
What can you repeat it? Sorry.
Would an employee lease work as proof of employment if you have an exempt unit? The question that, do any employees live on site?
That's going to show that they live in the unit, but I want to know that they are full-time at that development, because that is the requirement through the IRS that in order for that to be an exempt unit. So I'm going to need documentation that shows me that they work full-time at your development. And whether that's a pay stub or something in the lease, if the lease says like works at Laurel Ridge, then great. So now once I save it, it's going to save, and you can see like it logged me out for some reason. I'm not sure why, but if it does that to you, you press save. So all my answers, everything we did is in here. But the coolest part that is in here is actions required. So it says here, based on the response provided in the questionnaire, the following actions are required. Please follow the instructions below. If there are any questions regarding what is being requested, please contact the compliance monitor that set the notice for the monitoring review. And then it's reminding you again to submit electronically through CMTS that unit status report. And right, that's on my notes, so I can check that off. I'm getting ready to submit that. If the monitoring review is a desk and not an on-site, that tenant's rights and resource guide, right? So it's giving you that kind of notice. And based on your questions, if they were answered incorrectly, resulting in action needed, please submit through CMTS a written narrative for the reason of this error and confirm the correct answer. But based on the answers, this is telling me that I need to submit into the attachment system all of this stuff. I need my marketing to my vets. I need my utility allowances. I need my supportive services. I need my hub and nonprofit. I think that's what that says, right? Wait, no, wait, yeah. No, that's my CO or my other supportive service things that I had. The hub and nonprofit's optional. You can put it in there or you can submit it. It's going to tell me to submit my application fees, my supportive services, and my exempt documentation for my employee units. So it gives me my actions that I need to, plus I made a list over here of the actions that I needed to submit. So that is the new entrance interview questionnaire. And so also let's look at what it will look like once I do save it. And it'll take me back here and I can hit submit and I can preview before I submit. Remember, none of this has changed. So if I preview before I submit, then there it is. It looks just kind of like the other one, just with more questions and all of the answers. And again, Kara provided a blank one of these so you can start to prepare yourself for what you will answer when you get your notification for on-site. So that is it. Any questions before we move into just a brief reminder about a unit status report, because we're having lots of issues with those.
No questions that we need to answer. The blank one is in the handout. So if you see on the side, I've got somebody that says they didn't receive one. Now I've got questions. So the blank questionnaire is in the handout that's attached for this training. If you did not get that or you're not able to download it, you'll need to open it through and it'll open in a web browser. But you will then be able to save it as an Adobe Doc or as a PDF. If that doesn't work, send me an email and I will get it to you. Can we revisit, where'd the question go? The question for post 15 and application fees?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about that again. So if you are post 15 and we're down here in fees and services and it asks you right here, if your development is housing tax credit or exchange, are you charging for application fees? So if you are post 15, then you can just leave all of that blank. Even if you are charging application fees, you can leave all of that blank because remember, after the 15-year compliance period, we do not monitor for those application fees. So you could leave all of that blank. It'll still save, it'll still submit. Your monitor will not think you skipped it. They know you're post 15. They don't even really want to look at your application fees. And matter of fact, they would prefer that you leave this blank and not submit anything because then they don't have to look at it. So yes.
And the only time we'll run into issues with that is when you think you're post 15 in 2022, you don't go post 15 till 2023 and you don't upload. But I feel like the monitor's going to reach out to you and say, hey, we need this. And hopefully
Our monitors are probably going to reach out to you guys a lot as we kind of all start to learn how to do this and how this is affecting our monitoring reviews, how it's affecting you guys. So it's going to be a learning curve for all of us. So expect to hear from your monitor more than you usually do when preparing for an on-site review. Anything else before we do just a quick unit status report reminder?
I'm still getting questions about whether or not this is going to be recorded, and it is, and I've put the link in the chat. If you didn't get that or you missed it somehow, send me an email and I will be happy to email you the link to that. But if you're signed up to get our email announcements, you will receive a listserv announcement probably early next week. I don't think I'll be able to get it done today. These take quite a bit to download. So early next week, you'll get an announcement that says the department conducted a webinar on this topic. That webinar can now be viewed at this link. So you'll get that as well.
Yeah, we're also going to post it on our YouTube page, and Kara will have a link to it. So everybody, and it'll be on a link will be on our website. There'll be links to it everywhere. So everybody will be able to get in here and kind of watch it, or maybe you want to watch it while you're filling it out, but feel free to give us calls. Okay. Any others?
We had a question come in just now. That's something we need to be emailed. That's a property.
Okay.
Other than that,
Whoever, just send the email to either
Yeah.
Kara, myself, or Carolyn. Will be happy to answer your emails if it's very specific to your property. We want a very general kind of thing in here. Anything else? Okay. Unit status report. It is important that you have an up-to-date and accurate unit status report. So when you are entering the information about your unit, please make sure you are entering it in and it is correct. And I know that a lot of you rely on the upload from your software, but if your software is not uploading the correct information into the unit status report, it is causing a lot of issues that can lead to non-compliance. Transfers are always a big deal because your software changes the move-in date and we don't want that changed. Ac rehab, this is an acquisition rehab in your software can also be an issue if you have like, especially on these RAD conversions, because you have tenants who have lived there since 1989, but our rehab or our acquisition didn't happen until 2017. And so remember, if that was a HUD program in 1989, it wasn't a tax credit program. That is not the date on this report. The date on this report is the date for our programs. This is our report. So please remember that. So make sure you have an accurate move-in date. You have an accurate move-out date if it's a move-out. If not, make sure that is blank and don't have a move-out date. I have seen move-out dates in there when and a move-in date from like 2022 and a move-out date from 2020. Yeah, so please make sure if they moved in, there's no move-out date. If it's not vacant, the only time there should be a move-out is if this unit is vacant. Your TIC date, this is the last income cert date. So you're going to want to make sure that that is updated with the most current date. So this one, if it's a 2019 move-in and I've completed all of my recertification or annual data collection requirements, then that is going to be an 11/1/2022 date, or say I did it early, then it can be a 9/28/2022 date. And I don't care if you put the date they sign it or the date it's effective. I just really want to see that you've done whatever your annual data collection requirement or recertification requirement is within 120 days of that move-in date. So whatever date you want to put there, effective, signature, it doesn't matter as long as it is a 2022 within 120 days of that move-in date. Would everybody agree with that? I'm just making that up right now. Okay, then this would be a yes because this has been recerted. Even if it's just annual data collection, answer yes to that recert because it's in our head that's just saying, did you do annual data collection or recertification? Make sure the annual income is correct. If it is a annual data collection, it's probably going to be the move-in income. And one thing to remember is that, again, this is our report. So let's pretend you're 100% housing tax credit for TDHCA, but you have City of Houston bond funds, and they require you to do full research every year. And you're going to do that full research and say, and we're only requiring annual data collection. And so this annual income is always going to be the 2019 annual income for us. If you put in the 2022, it's probably not going to trigger anything for us, but it's not correct reporting. This is our report. It should only reporting TDHCA information. Household size, make sure you have the correct household size in here. Make sure the tenant rent is correct. A lot of times, this is not what is in the lease and is not what's in the rent roll. It's not what's in the ledger. It causes a lot of confusion. Utility allowance, make sure that that is the most current, up-to-date utility allowance. And remember, with utility allowance, the effective date is effective for everybody, except for your housing choice voucher programs, housing tax credit people, but not housing tax credit. Everybody the utility allowance is the effective date for your entire development. So you need to go in and change that as soon as you know it. If this is a special needs household, answer yes. If it's not, then answer no. Look at, maybe this person is disabled and special needs, but they're not in an accessible unit. It's still yes here. You don't put no, put yes. If they have an assistance payment, you're going to put that there and what type of assistance this is. So if this is that housing choice voucher, you're going to put that there. If they don't have assistance, you're going to leave that blank. Here is the biggest thing. These funding sources, these are our funding sources. Remember the example I said where I said you were housing tax credit and you had City of Houston bond? Let's pretend that that's what this is. You're going to answer that you are housing tax credit 60/60 on your rent. The bond stays blank. That's not our bond funding. That's the City of Houston's bond funding. And I don't want to know the bond funding for the City of Houston. This is not their report. This is our report. So you're only reporting our funding on here. Does that make sense? Any questions?
It sounds good. We've had a couple questions come in. For the unit status report, if we're 100% low income but still complete full annual reviews per our investor,
Okay.
would the annual income still need to only be the move-in income? I'm inclined to say yes, because that's what qualified.
Yes, that's what qualified you, and that's what we're going to be monitoring under. However, I do understand where an investor might also be using the unit status report, because if this is the only program that they have, they might also be using the unit status report for one of their reporting mechanisms. And if your investor wants you to go ahead and update that, go ahead and update that. It's not really going to hurt you, or really hinder you in our review. Really, it's just going to trigger us to say this is 100% and you don't have to do a recertification and your investor requires you to, and this person goes up to $80,000 and it's a one person. This is just going to trigger us that this household, what this is telling us in our world when we look at the unit status report, is that in 2019, this person moved in at $80,000. Even though this shows that there was a research done in 2022, as 100%, our monitors are saying they shouldn't be doing full research. They can, but they don't have to. And so that $80,000, we're probably going to pull this file to take a look at it, because we're like, whoa, they just totally moved in an ineligible household and making $80,000. But if we know, oh wait, Carol was out there last year, let me ask, or 3 years ago, and Carol be like, no, they're due full research because their investor wants them to. We'd probably even put a note in CMTS, and then we would probably be like, oh, they probably made 80,000 there.
In worst case, we're gonna pull that file, even if it's just as a spot check, and we're gonna go, okay, initially this person made 16,000, they won the lottery, and now they make 80,000.
Yeah. We might spot check it. We might pull it in as a review, but it's just going to trigger us to pull some of those files or spot check. Sometimes you'll see us say, here's your file list, but then we also need these. It's because of things like this. It's really because of your USR that we even have to look at extra files.
when the tick date, have you already talked about tick date?
Uh-huh.
Okay, when the tick date doesn't get updated, that's a lot of times why we spot check. If we have like 10 or 12 that we're spot checking, we're probably looking to see, are they actually doing these and forgetting to report it? So yes.
Yeah.
Update your unit status report.
Yeah, your unit status report. It's an important report, and it's really important to us. It's important to us in so many ways. It's also the unit vacancy report is tied to this. And another reason why we wanted to kind of talk about this during this is the unit status report, the new average income rule requires you to report to the state agency when there's been a change of designation. This report for our average income is going to be that mechanism for TDHCA. So if you're not using this correctly, then we're going to have to come up with another mechanism. So we prefer not to come up with something else that you might have to do, or another report, or another thing we have to look at. We already have it really built in here. So we would like you to use this. And if you use it correctly, we can then use this as the reporting mechanism of this. We do full research and we're average income, and this went from a 60 to a 70, and
Right.
and then we can see, and we'll be able to see that because all of your reports are archived, so we'll be able to look back and look at the report prior to this and see that, oh, unit 101 was a 60, and then on 11/1/2022 when they did the research, now it's a 70, and so that's why we can use it as that reporting mechanism of a change of designation.
And that's going to be why those quarterly reports are super
Yes,
important.
and that's another thing Wendy really wanted me to bring up in this is you need to make sure you're submitting your quarterly reports in a timely manner. We've kind of gotten a little bit lax on reporting that as non-compliance, but again, because this is going to be the reporting mechanism for average income, and it's always been the reporting mechanism for all of our programs, we really need you to be doing it correctly, and we'll probably be citing a lot more non-compliance with failure to submit quarterly reports. So please make sure your quarterly reports are being submitted January, I'm going to mess this up. January, April, July, June, and October. January, April, June, and October.
So we do have several questions that have come in. For subsidy rent, do we need to update the rent on the USR every time the portions change? And Carolyn answered this in the chat box. It's not going to make a huge difference unless you have multifamily direct loan funds like home, in which case, yes, you need to update it every single time. And I know some of these folks get new ones every other month, but in that case, it would need to be updated every time. And then the next person said, I missed what it was for the tenant paid rent. I think, I don't know exactly what we missed on there.
So tenant paid rent, just make sure it's always updated with your most current tenant paid rent. Tenant paid rent is going to be a little bit different than the annual income. Remember I said if you are doing annual data collection, your annual income is probably not going to change from the time that you moved in. The only time that this is going to change is if you're doing full research, right? But tenant rent, any and every time that tenant's rent changes, whether it goes up or goes down, it needs to be updated. So this is different than annual income, and your utility allowance needs to be updated every single time you have a utility allowance change.
Yes. Okay. So how do we know if we're required to do quarterly reporting, and do we keep doing that even when we're post 15?
Yes, everybody does quarterly reporting forever and ever until you no longer are regulated under a land use restriction agreement. Yes, everybody, all the time.
So the next question, it's a little bit specific, but if they are on housing and they lose their voucher, should the USR still hold them as a voucher receiver until that 180 days is up, where housing would officially, because they can go back in. So should the property leave it? I think that's irrelevant to our purposes.
Unless it's multifamily direct loan, again, yes. if it's just straight housing tax credit, you can wait the 180 days. But if it's multifamily direct loan, remember the gross rent calculation for any of the multifamily direct loan, which is home, National Housing Trust Fund, TCAP RF, TCAP repayment funds, and I'm missing one.
Omar, NSP.
And I got
National
Housing Trust Fund. I'm missing that one, National Housing Trust Fund. If you have any of those, remember your gross rent is tenant portion of rent plus the utility allowance plus any mandatory fees plus the housing payment has to be at or below the gross rent, unless you meet special exceptions. But we know what those are and we will monitor accordingly to those.
I'm not seeing anything else. Are you, Carolyn? No.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes,
Okay.
Can you update the USR on a monthly basis or as there are unit changes without submitting the USR until the required submission deadline?
Yes, yep. You can go in at any time. A monitor can go in and pull a live USR. I can go into your property right now and hit a button and it pulls the unit status report as you have it right now. So yeah, so you can go in and update it at any time. And it's better to do it as unit changes happen or as things happen in your units and in your property versus waiting until it's requested, because it's easier to go in and change 1 or 2 units than having to go in and change 50 to 150 units. So
we've got a raised hand. Nope, the hand went down. If the hand is still up, okay.
Yes, that's not a.
Okay.
I think that's it.
all right, well, we'll stay kind of on. If anybody has any additional questions, we'll stay on for a few more minutes here, about 5 or so more minutes. I mean, we'll stay longer if we get questions, but anybody who wants to go ahead and log out, you can go ahead and log out. This concludes the entrance or the new monitoring review questionnaire, the new notification you're going to start to see, and a brief just like how to update your unit status report and why it is important to make sure it is accurate and updated. And again, it's okay if you have your software, upload it, just do a double check and go in and make the fixes to the units that your software messed up.
So the person's question that raised their hand and then put their hand down is move-in date. I'm not sure what the question is specifically. Can you elaborate on that? If the move-in date should be the date they move into the unit and qualify the unit under the program.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've created confusion in the transferring.
When you so when they transfer, a true transfer, this is the difference. A true transfer. So everybody knows that a transfer means, depends on 8B election, if your housing tax credit, if you're any of the multifamily direct loans, transfer is a little bit different, but for housing tax credit, it depends on the elections. So say they're transferring within a project, so multifamily direct loan, and if you're housing tax credit and you're transferring in the same project, your move-in date does not change. And I know sometimes your system will change your move-in date. So for this household, if they moved in on November 1st, let's pretend they moved in, this USR says November 1st, 2019. They moved into unit 101 and their housing tax credit, and let's say they're also home. And they are transferring, or they moved into unit 101 in 2019. But say they lived in 103 when they first moved onto the property, and they moved into 103 on 06/12/2012. That should be the move-in date for 101. I know they didn't live in 101 there, they lived in 103, but this is when they moved on to your development, and all recertification dates are triggered from that. That is true for all the multifamily direct loan transfers and for housing tax credit transfers within a project, so or a building. These are true transfers. The only time that date is going to change is if they went from 103 and they moved to, or they lived in 203 and they moved to 101 in the housing tax credit program. They were, each building is its own project. Then the move-in date is not a transfer. That is a move out, move in, and they would have the brand new move-in date of when that actually occurred. If you need more information on transfers, you can call me or email me, but yeah.
Yeah, I can help with that too. Can we print the questionnaire before filling it out? Can they print a blank one before completing it?
I think you probably could. You could probably go in and when you first come into here, because you're not submitting it, if you go down, I've never tried this, but if you go down and hit save and then go back before you enter anything, because if you enter anything and you hit save, that's going to stay there. It won't be blank. But if you come in here and don't enter anything and just scroll down and hit save, and then go back to, it'll ask you if you want to save it and go back. And then if you come back here and you preview before submitting, it should be blank because you haven't put anything in there, right? And then when you hit submit, that's when like it's submitted to us. So the only time like it gets submitted to us is when you hit that button.
So we have a follow-up question on the employee unit evidence. What is going to be acceptable as an employee unit evidence?
Just show me that they work at your development full-time, whatever that is, whether it be an employment letter, a contract, a pay stub, something that shows me that they work at your development full-time.
That gets us caught up unless somebody's typing now. Any hands raised? Okay, so if you did not get your question asked or you have questions after you sleep after this riveting training and you have new questions that pop up, let us know. We can always answer them through email. You can email any one of us. I've put our emails in the chat box over there. You can also find them online. If you were unable to download the handout, please let me know and I will get that to you. Otherwise, I'm going to end this webinar and we will look forward to seeing you guys next time around. Everybody have a great day and a happy holidays.